What up, YouTube? Today we're doing another Widebody job. This time it's not a full install, it's just the rear quarter panel flares. It's a full Widebody kit that's already installed. Dude got the rear flares painted. They just have to have the quarter panels cut and the flares bolted on so he don't lose them, because you know OEM Widebodies, the rear quarter panel flares clip in normally, but when you go on a narrow body car, you have to cut your quarters and put holes in, so you could use bolts, or you weld in the OEM Widebody quarter, which is way more of an expensive job for essentially the same thing. But I'm going to show you guys how to do this, so people who install these OEM kits on their 15-up Chargers, if they want, they can install the rear quarters themselves. Now let's just start off by saying, god damn, that plum crazy is such a good color. Especially when you look at it right there next to that there sublime green now. Ooh wee! Ow, ow, ow! Yeah. Look at that. The sun hitting these colors crazy right now. But you see it, it's a cat. And no, it ain't up badged. This is what it looks like when you have an OEM kit on a narrow body car. She needs a little cleaning, but I don't judge. That's a fucking sexy ass Hellcat. You see the blower? No diddy. Yeah. Look at my boy's cluster, bro. That shit goes crazy. With the matching steering wheel though. Yeah, this bitch is thorough. We about to get it right though. I'm gonna show you guys how to cut these, put holes in, and use bolts. So we gonna pull it in the garage and get some shade, and we gonna get right to it. All right, so here is basically all you're gonna need if you wanna attempt to DIY this and install these yourself. So like I said, the rest of the kit is pretty self-explanatory. The OEM side, front fenders bolt right on, bumper bolts right on, doors go right on, back bumper goes right on, side skirts go right on. The rear quarter panels you have to cut for the wider wheel clearance. As you see, these big boys, they stick out. They will eventually hit this and make it bend, and I've seen it done multiple times. So you have to cut that for wheel clearance, and when you cut it, you expose metal behind this that allows you to reach behind, and you could stick bolts through these and basically secure the flare like you would a OEM flare, essentially, without welding in quarters. So this is the main majority of what you'll need: car jack and a jack. You're gonna want to take the wheels off. You don't want to risk cutting the wheel, blowing a tire in your face, and you're gonna need that access behind the wheel well. Harbor Freight, get the bolt set, 460 piece. AutoZone, get some fat washers with the relatively small hole, but not super small. You could always drill them a little bigger if your bolts are thick. This will be used to paint the end of the bolts and mark where we're going to drill through the quarter panel, so we can put nuts and washers behind there and secure that flare. This will be the outline where we're cutting. This will be to tape off whatever we're not cutting, and the exterior of the flare, so nothing under that is not underneath the flare that's exposed. Above the flare, nothing will be shown. Bodywork wise, it's all underneath. You know, all your cuts, your drill holes. You're gonna need a bit set, mask for when you cut, a straight edge hacksaw, or whatever you call that, just a hacksaw, and an angle grinder, and then some filler primer. This is to stop the rust when you make your cuts, and a drill. That's basically all you need to get started on this. And then obviously, well, where's it at? The flares themselves. You guys could see it's perfect that he has the clips in for me, because that means I could put paint on the tip of those clips. So I'm gonna show you guys how we're gonna get started. All right, so easy way to go about this is use the body lines kind of as an outline. So in this case, open that door, go about there. And all you perfectionists watching, yeah, it hurts me to cut into this beautiful purple rod too, but you know, if you go wide body, you gotta understand, if you go wide body, the OEM wide bodies have different quarter panels modified to clip in these flares. So you need to cut them for the wider wheel clearance, because the OEM wide body quarters have factory cuts to where there's clearance for the wheels, and you need to drill holes for bolts if you want them to be secure without risk of them falling off, flying off. Use adhesive, they'll eventually fall off. Ask me how I know. The right way to do it is bolt it on or weld in OEM wide body quarters. And I will be doing welding eventually once I get my hands on a welder, but that'll come with time. Until then, you could always go that route after doing this, because there's not too much cut off your quarter, and you could just weld in a whole wide body quarter anyway if there was. So that's really the route. Most people, if you want to really be perfect, you could do, but you don't have to make it work, is what I'm saying. But I do take my time with these lines. I don't like to rush them. I see some people go over them quick, and even if you know what you're doing, which I do, I like to take my time and tape it off, even though I could do it without the tape. You want a clean line cut, as clean as possible, because you do got to keep in mind it's not going to be perfect, but it could be close to it. I made my cuts very clean, and I got better with time. When I started, I wasn't nearly as good. But it's something, if you do enough, you get better at, like anything in life. So this is the real in-depth process for this portion, since a lot of people were asking. And there's going to be people criticizing this method. It is what it is. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it to your car. But it's the easiest route. Nothing bad comes from it. Your flares stay on once they're bolted. I don't know. People like to complain if things aren't done the way they like. Well, like I said, if you have the money, get the quarters welded in. But not everyone has the money for that. That's why you do this. Very easy method. But now that we got our outline basically of what's going to be cut for the wheel clearance, you could get your flare and mock it up and outline the top half so none of your markings go on the paint. I'll show you guys what I mean here. But first we're gonna go ahead and cut this. So what I'm gonna do now is mark my outline. So all right. So now that you got your outline, you can make your first initial cut. The other side, and you can use an angle grinder to get the top portion So now, once you make your initial cuts with that, you get an angle grinder, cut this top portion, and then basically peel that piece of metal back and cut any of the backing that you need to off, so you have that clearance for the bolts and the wider wheels. Now you see that? There's a lot of body filler underneath this, but it doesn't really matter. It's how it was on my boy Maj's car too. It's not a big deal at all though, since it's all getting cut off, but when you drill those holes for the bolts, since there's body filler here, it is very prone to cracking. So you want to be very careful when you cut and realize a car has body filler on it like this. Again, not a super big deal, just keep that in mind. Now once you make your initial cut, your flare is going to need some modification. So the bottom halves of these on the corners you want to cut and grind down, as well as these pointy pieces, because we won't be using them. Now we could line up our flare where it's going to go. And this is where you can tape off so you can mark what you're going to cut or what you're not going to cut. Okay, now that we got our outline, that's great. We could pop her back off, and now you see we have an idea of where we're, working at with our space. And now you could take off all this and look at your pretty imperfections from cutting up the quarter. We're gonna sand her up and prime it, and a lot of that filler cracked from cutting. So it's not going to be the prettiest, but it will have secure flares when it's done. And we're going to clean up some of that, make the shape a lot smoother. But right now we're worried about getting our bolts lined up so we know where the flares will be bolting. Just making sure our bolts are in the slots that we're going to use. Bolts, I gotta find. Oh, there it is. All right, what I meant to say was, now you can put the clips in your holes on the flares where they're gonna be bolted, but the clips act as outlines for the marker. You'll see what I mean here. So we're gonna take, oh, that's dripping, gotta be careful. We're gonna take some white paint from this pen and just paint the tip of every clip white, the very tip. Be careful, because this guy's flares are painted. I don't want to mess up his paint, so this is a job that the paint's already done. We're just doing the rear flares, and he's good to go with his car. He has to do some other stuff, I think, like exhaust. But other than that, you're gonna be ready after this. So now you can see we painted the tips of all these clips with some white paint. So now we're gonna line it up how it would be lined up for when we put it on. And use that outline as a guide, kind of, so you could press the flare against where you're going to drill. So sometimes you see it's a little wonky, doesn't come out perfect. So we're gonna wipe that all off and do it one more time. All that body filler needs to be wiped away. Now we'll go ahead and do it again, but this time just press against it with a thick coat of paint. Now that's a good example. So you can see all the white is where we're going to be drilling for holes. And again, I'm going to clean this up. It's going to be a smoother line, but that's our initial cut. I'm actually going to clean that up now. And now that we got our holes drilled for the bolts, or not the holes drilled, but marked, we're gonna drill them, start with a small bit, move our way up, and I'll show you guys what to do from there. All right, so get a small drill bit where you marked all your holes. Just go through those. All right, now all our initial holes are drilled. So go over it with a bit of a bigger bit. We cleaned up the cut a little bit. It ain't perfect. We gotta get that metal behind it, but that's okay. We're getting there. Right now we wanna see where our bolts line up. You're gonna need to go up a size for these anyway. So now that we have our initial holes drilled, we want to get a bit slightly thicker than the bolt and go through those holes with it. All right, so what we're gonna do is line everything up, and if all the bolts go through, we're good to go. And we're gonna prime it so it don't rust, sand on the edges a bit so they're a little more clean, and then do the other side. Pretty straightforward process. It's not too hard, just tedious. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing and never done it, obviously it's gonna be hard because you don't have experience doing it. But it's a very, if you're hands-on with tools at all, you can figure this out. There's different ways to do it. This is one of the cheaper ways, so I know there's gonna be people judging in the comments how the car's ruined because you cut it. Sorry, we're not perfectionists. We're young guys who like to modify our cars and make them look cool. And if you do these wide bodies right, you won't lose a flare. So people could talk smack all they want, but at the end of the day, you ain't gonna lose these flares. So who's really the silly one? The guy without the wide body hating, or the guy with the wide body? This is what I mean. We got the bolts in all the slots. Now, let's see how they line up. Hopefully good. All right, you can see we got this driver's side flare on and secure. Lined her up as best as we could. It is bolted, so you can't just yank this thing off. I'm yanking it right now. I got it as seamless as I could with it being OEM on a non-OEM car. So there's not complete seamlessness, but it's basically there. But this thing won't budge off. And what I did was I used bolts, as you can see, just like that. Oops. Bolts with nuts and washers. There you go. But that's how it's secured. So I stuck these longer M5 bolts on the inside where I marked for each clip I was using. Now for me personally, I only use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, I don't use that one. So I use 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know, but I use 5. I use 5 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 on the bottom of each side, so you can't tug from the bottom. Then 3 across the top. So like I said, this thing ain't budging. And she's on there. So now all we got left to do. Ooh, fuck. Almost busted my ass. All we got left to do is the passenger side. So we gonna get to it.